Good evening and welcome to the Cheltenham Borough Council Planning Committee being held on Thursday the 17th of August 2023. My name is Councillor Paul Baker and I'm Chairman of the committee. This meeting is being held by the Council for live broadcast on its YouTube channel. If you make a representation to the meeting, you are consenting to the use of those sound recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. If there are any breaks in transmission to the YouTube stream, the meeting will be adjourned for a short period until any issues are resolved. There is no fire alarm scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, please follow officers to the nearest exit. Thank you. So firstly, I would like to welcome Councillor Clark as a permanent member of the committee following the resignation of Councillor John Payne. So welcome, Barbara. Item 1 is apologies. We have Councillor Wheeler, who's in New Zealand. Diggory Seacombe is in France, no doubt with a glass of red wine. Apart from that, I think no other apologies. We then go on to declarations of interest. Item 2, Councillor Clark.
I'm a non-executive director of the Cheltenham Trust, so I should be leaving on the item regarding the Wilson.
Lovely, thank you very much. No other declarations? Okay. Item 3, declaration of independent site visits. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. I visited both locations.
Sorry. Benzel Block. Andrews. Councillor Andrews. Sorry.
I visited both sites independently. Okay.
Thank you, Glenn. Apologies. Any other member? No? Okay. Agenda item 4 then. Minutes of last meeting. Members happy? Councillor Oliver.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, on page 6, under Lincoln Avenue, bullet point 3, it reads at the end, this would be deemed as a loss of amenity and that is acceptable. That should be, and that is unacceptable.
Thank you. Subject to that, all happy? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so then we now move on to item 5, which is the playing field adjacent to 10 Stone Crescent. Sadly, Ben Warren, planning officer, is poorly, so we have a more than able substitute in Mike. So Mike's going to introduce the case for us.
Thank you, Chairman. So can we have... Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of 6 dwellings on land south of Stone Crescent. The application is at the Planning Committee at the request of Councillor Pinniger and Councillor Willingham. So the site location is shown here. The application relates to a parcel of undeveloped land, shown in red there, adjacent to an existing residential development known as Stone Crescent, which is accessed from Alston Lane. The site is located wholly within the Cheltenham's principal urban area and forms part of the land at Stone Crescent, allocated for housing in the Cheltenham Plan under policy HD5. The application lies to the west of Rowanfield School site and to the north of the King George V playing fields. The land immediately to the west of the application site is owned by the applicant and benefits from an extant planning permission for 13 dwellings. So there the site is from overhead. And we have some images of the site and the adjoining area. It's taken from the entrance to the site and taken from just inside the site looking towards the south. And that is taken on the left looking towards the playing field, King George V playing fields. And the other photo on the right is taken from the southern end of the site looking north towards Stone Crescent. Moving to the site layout plan, you can see the layout of the dwellings with road parking spaces, garages, and private amenity spaces displayed there. The properties will be served by the existing access road, the approved access road for the planning, which was granted planning permission for the 13 dwellings to there. And we have the plans of the individual dwellings. As you can see from the report, scheme was amended during the consideration of the proposals to improve the layout. Those are the garages. One of the items referred to in paragraph 6.33 of the report is the suggestion that came forward that a pedestrian link could be provided through the development, which would give access to the playing fields, and that would be improvement to the area. Whilst there's not sufficient space to fully accommodate this within the scheme, a change in the layout does allow for a 1 metre strip of land adjacent to plot 6, which could help to facilitate a future link, and that's highlighted in orange on the plan before you. This would need a connection with a change in layout to the approved scheme to the west in order to provide the 1 to 2 metres of width required. This would need to be subject of a future application relating to that approved scheme. So although necessary, as in the views of officers, for the grant of planning permission, this would be a positive connection in terms of sustainability. So key planning matters are set out in the report: the principle of development, design, layout, impact on neighbouring amenities, impact on trees, landscaping, contaminated land, parking and highway safety, sustainability, flooding and drainage, and affordable housing. So in conclusion about these aspects, it is an allocated housing site, and as such the principle of residential development is already considered acceptable. We have revised plans and additional information in response to the various concerns and comments that have been raised. This includes an improved site layout in the officer's view, following a reduction in the number of units from 7 to 6. This has also led to improved landscaping and planting provision, increased sustainability measures and appropriate details to address the comments from the contaminated land and drainage officers. While it's regrettable that affordable housing cannot be achieved on this scheme, there has been appropriate viability testing undertaken, and this, therefore, the provision is not necessary in order to grant planning permission. I point out the absence of a current 5-year housing land supply for the borough, as indicated in the principles in paragraph 11D of the National Planning Policy Framework, and this should be granted, planning permission should be granted unless there's a clear reason for refusing the development as identified, specifically related to protected areas or assets, and any adverse impacts of granting planning permission would have outweigh the benefits of the scheme. And the benefits of this scheme include the addition of 6 residential units to the housing stock. There are no protected assets or areas of importance being identified, therefore there is no clear reason for refusing development in this case. Having said all that, the scheme is considered to be acceptable recommended for a grant of planning permission subject to a number of conditions which are summarised on that slide. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. So we have a number of speakers. First of all, I'd like to ask Deepak Patel to speak in objection to the application. Deepak, you have 3 minutes. Are you ready?
No, it's just me. I need to put the microphone on manually.
Cool, thank you. Good evening. I am representing the views of residents who object to the development going ahead. We do not feel that the developer or planning office have fully engaged with or provided us with any assurance that our daily lives will not be negatively impacted. Only around 20% of those dwellings in the impacted area have been targeted, about 12 houses out of a possible 60. Our main objection points centre on health and safety issues, including traffic-related incidents due to an increase in traffic flow, negative impact on already constrained parking in the area, access issues and roads being unsuitable for constant construction traffic, an increase in HMOs and total lack of affordable housing. The last-minute rushed discussion about a new pathway directly to the playing fields, which if implemented without proper consultation with local residents, has the potential to increase criminality within the area. Note, the area has previously been subject to a policing SARA due to antisocial behaviour. To provide greater clarity, the development will only be accessible via a single entry-exit point for motor vehicles. The already congested area will be heavily impacted by a significant increase in traffic. There will be a reduction in the amount of parking available to residents. This is already an issue due to a significant number of HMOs. These additional houses will exacerbate this issue, causing overspill into the existing estate. Note, none of the new houses have been earmarked as affordable housing. Due to the narrow roads, no real turning areas and overgrown hedges around Wharfdale Square, which are renowned for blocking and impairing the vision of drivers, all manner of vehicles currently have a hard time getting around. Construction vehicles will experience the same issues, thereby causing major obstructions, inconvenience, and potential health and safety issues. Inconsiderate parking by school-run parents is also a current health and safety issue, forcing residents to regularly drive on the wrong side of the road or perform evasive manoeuvres to avoid collisions. Due to there being no pavements in Wharfdale Square, pedestrians, including young children, can regularly be seen walking and playing on the brick-paved roads. This poses a health and safety issue as traffic flow will increase significantly. Near misses are already a common occurrence. Cyclists in the area can also attest to this situation. In closing, the future of the area and its community is very important to residents. The development will be a massive change that will impact our daily lives, and yet not all impacted residents have been properly consulted, let alone been given an opportunity to have a meaningful discussion with the developers and the planning office to discuss our concerns. As such, if this planning application is given the go-ahead, we strongly recommend that developers and the planning office initiate a public consultation. Residents would like assurance that strict measures are imposed on the developers to ensure that their ways of working do not negatively impact on the daily lives of existing residents. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much indeed. That's okay. The second speaker is the agent, John Macready, speaking in favour of the application. John, you have 3 minutes. Ready when if you want to press your mic when you're ready. Oh, sorry.
Super. Good evening, Chair and committee members. I'm John Newlands Macready, a chartered surveyor specialising in residential development. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak in favour of New Dawn Homes' planning application for 6 semi-detached houses at the Rowanfield School playing field at the rear of Stone Crescent. Ben Warren, your planning officer, has produced a very comprehensive planning committee report that thoroughly explains all of the key issues and the various changes requested by consultees and officers, so that the application before you this evening has a favourable recommendation for approval. The site is dissected by major sewers and a large water main, which creates some technical constraints, but these have all been taken into account in the scheme before you. This is an allocated site in the local plan in a very sustainable location, with all the necessary amenities very close by. It will provide much needed semi-detached homes in this location. The designs are modern and similar to the homes that we built next to our offices in Village Road, Cheltenham. We are aware of some adverse comments from the existing residents in Stone Crescent, where there is a lack of parking on their development, which was built by Barratt Homes back in 2002. Our scheme includes the maximum parking that is acceptable to the County Highways Department and your planning department to ensure that the pre-existing parking issues in Stone Crescent are not made worse by these proposals. An average of over 2.5 parking spaces per 3-bedroom semi-detached house is provided. The proposed site road has also been designed to accommodate on-road visitor parking, as well as a turning head for bin lorries, etc., on the already approved layout. We are aware that this development is close to Rowanfield School, and at peak drop-off and collection time, this causes additional traffic and parking issues. But this development is quite some distance from the school entrance and Alston Lane, and will have no effect on the existing parking issues. We will, of course, be preventing delivery lorries and site traffic, etc., at school drop-off and collection times. New Dawn Homes build quality houses and are a Cheltenham-based small business providing jobs for local people. The houses are highly insulated, environmentally friendly, with solar panels on the southeast and southwest roofs. They have permeable paving, underground attenuation tanks to restrict rainwater runoff, and enhanced landscaping to front and rear gardens. We've been asked to provide a footpath link to King George V playing fields, but this cannot be provided on this application. We hope that members can support your planning officer's recommendation and permit this much needed housing development. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, John. We now have 2 ward councillors speaking. First of all, Ward Councillor Richard Pinniger from St Mark's. As you know, Richard, you have up to 5 minutes.
Excuse me. I'm Richard Pinniger, Borough Councillor for St Mark's, Wharfdale Square and Stone Crescent. I'm also chair of the Friends of King George V Playing Fields group, who help to look after the park. And now that changes have been made and supplemental agreements agreed, I'd like to support the planning report of Ben Warren, which effectively means that I support the application. The fact of the matter is that we need more homes, and now that we have worked with the developer to satisfy a number of objections whilst keeping the site viable, I hope that we will get them soon. During the few weeks we've had to respond to this planning permission, I've been working with residents and the Cabinet Member for Planning to improve the plans, particularly traffic considerations and sustainability measures. I want to address construction traffic, resident traffic and the path. Construction traffic. Residents have pointed out the narrowness of Wharfdale Square and, with several houses of multiple occupancy in the area, the constriction of Stone Crescent due to parked cars. Waste and recycling lorries access Stone Crescent now by driving 3/4 around Wharfdale Square, then reversing down Stone Crescent. This has led to accidents. So the residents are understandably concerned about the construction traffic. I'd therefore like to thank Planning Officer Ben Warren for adding more conditions to his report to help control construction traffic. Sadly, the creative solutions that I was looking for were not forthcoming. Resident traffic. We know that Wharfdale Square is not suitable for an extra 19 houses, given that of the 60 current houses, all but 10 need access down the left-hand side of the square. So we're jumping from 50 to 70 houses driving over this bricked, pedestrianised stretch of road with 2 blind corners. Several residents pointed out how dangerous it already is. However, we do need these new homes. I'm hopeful that the inconvenience of Wharfdale Square and the availability of a link path to the park will mean that families who are keen on parks and active travel will buy the new houses and displace residents who might prefer to drive in a car to the local shops. The path. I'd like to thank John and Angela at New Dawn Homes and Ben again for working with us to incorporate a minimum of a 3-metre wide path through to the park, wide enough to discourage antisocial behaviour. A study I read suggests that neighbourhoods with good connectivity generate 10% less carbon emissions from transport throughout their life, which should be around 100 years. This is certainly what the Cheltenham Climate Change SPD 2019 recommends. In 2020, the Government Advisor for the Natural Environment, Natural England, found that people who live in neighbourhoods with greater amounts of green infrastructure tend to be happier, healthier and live longer lives than those with who live in less green places. I did survey the residents in the left-hand side of Wharfdale Square and the residents of Stone Crescent, and on the day, I found that 19 of the 22 people that I spoke to were in favour, with 1 neutral and 1 against. The neutral has since changed to an objection to the path and has explained why. Finally, I'd like to add that the Committee of Friends of King George V Playing Field are in favour of this link, as it will bring more residents into the park. The Friends group already has plans and are raising money for a circular path around the playing fields, and I hope that the commitment from the Cabinet Member for Planning to build a link will assist the Friends in completing this challenge. The planning permission in front of you only includes 1 metre of the required 3 metres of width for the new path. New Dawn Homes have made commitments to Ben, the Cabinet Member for Planning, and myself to amend the 2018 plan to provide the additional 2 metres of width for the path. In addition to that, the Cabinet Member for Planning is committed to find the money within the machinery of CBC to provide the necessary ramp into the park and a path to join this ramp to the existing pathways. I commend Ben's report to the committee and with these caveats fully support it. Please permit this development today.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor William.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start with some issues raised at 6.73 in your report, which is the sewage connections. And while I hate to disagree with the officer, this is a matter for planning, because if you create houses and you have people in those houses, they are going to create more sewage. So if you permit this, you will create more sewage. And I have a constituent who is on the sewer downstream of this development, who regularly has raw, untreated sewage bubbling up into their back garden. Now, no one, but especially not a young family with children, deserves to have sewage in their back garden. Now, I'm not saying you should refuse this, but you really need to put some conditions in there about getting this sewer upgraded if you are going to allow this. Otherwise, you are simply condemning a family to have more sewage, more raw, untreated sewage in their back garden. So that's the first point I would make. The second point I would make follows on from the rather eloquent objection you heard earlier. There is only one road access out onto Alston Lane, and this committee is in August, so let's have a look at this. You haven't seen what it's like at school and pick up and drop off. I'm having to try and fund a traffic regulation order as county councillor around the school because of the chaos. And you're adding nearly 20 extra houses that are going to try and pass through a junction that is less than 75 metres away from from the school gates, and it isn't safe. There is no mitigation on that. And again, where's the mitigation? The final point I want to come to is at 6.60 in the affordable and deals with affordable housing. Now, the site was split. So we've already had this, why was the site split? And the Housing Enabling Officer has come back to the committee and said there should be a provision of 3 affordable houses. And then, without any evidence that any of you or any of us can scrutinise, so have you seen any evidence? You have a look. You find me the evidence in your report bundle showing you and the public that this is not viable, right? There's no evidence. I've got paper evidence here that shows New Dawn Homes, this is their latest accounts, and I did print a copy, but I'm not allowed to circulate it. So New Dawn Homes' latest accounts shows that in the last year, the cash at bank and in hand increased from 3.383 million to 9.070 million. And the shareholders' funds went from £9.241 million to £12.357 million. Now, to suggest that this development can't provide affordable housing is at best questionable. There's no evidence. And the thing that you have failed to do is to add any protection for uplift. So where is the agreement in there that if they make more profit on this than the figures that they have provided, or may have provided that no one has scrutinised, where is the provision for uplift to get this council some affordable housing? Now, I spoke to my colleague, Councillor Atherstone, who's the Cabinet Member for Housing, and to summarise her comments, she was disappointed that the council had failed to get any affordable housing from this development. Now, if there is that viability question, you really need to look after people who need affordable housing in this town, because it would be shameful if the council approves this based on some figures, the developer then makes more profit, and because there is no uplift agreement, we get nothing for affordable housing. As I say, if you do that, it will be a shameful neglect of people needing affordable housing. So what I'm saying to you is those figures should be able to be scrutinised by the committee, and there needs to be some uplift protection in there, and that should all be conditioned, because otherwise we are failing the least well off in Cheltenham. With that, I will conclude my remarks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. That's your 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, so we now go on to member questions. I'm sure there will be a few. Who would like to kick off with any questions? Councillor Fisher, please.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. As regards the comments from Councillor Whittingham, have we not gone to the district valuer? Because that's the guy who should decide whether it's affordable housing or not. And the other one is, I can't find it now, but I've read this report, and we were waiting some information from Severn Trent on the sewage. And has it come? And I haven't seen it. So if we can put it up. But that are the two questions I have at the moment.
Can you put your thing off? Thank you. Do you want to address? Yeah. I'll ask Mike to address the affordable homes issue.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Fisher, we have had contact with the district valuer, and the district valuer, we take the view of the district valuer as to the viability issue. We don't publish, I'll go further than your question if you don't mind, we don't usually publish that information. It's confidential to the scheme. It is based on the scheme, not what the profitability of the company might be. It has got to be that site related, And there was points raised about issues about overage and so on. There's no overage in relation to building costs either, take into account in those. It is at the point of that we have that view. In terms of Severn Trent, yes, I've seen something. They didn't respond to our consultation, but they did respond to the applicant's approach to them. I did not identify any particular concerns on this particular issue. But I would make the point, of course, in terms of consideration of planning issues, members who will attended the training session will be aware it's not a material consideration to deal with those items that are taken care of by other legislation. So I would reiterate that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor McCloskey.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment. I think it was today on the Today programme that there was a discussion about affordable housing, and it was mentioned that how developers are entitled to make a 20% profit. They don't have to forego any more than that or to end up with a development which would give them less than 20%. But my question relates to the comments made by the resident of Stone, whichever it is, about the overspill of parking from this development into the existing development. 6.53 says, to ensure that parking provision is maintained within this development, a condition has been suggested which requires the parking arrangements to remain as approved. Well, it might have been suggested, but where is it? And who will be responsible for enforcing it? That's my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. We have a condition that says that the development should be built in accordance with the plans. The planned layout is there to prevent those changes as referred to in the paragraph. So that's how we would look to maintain the situation and not make the situation any worse.
That sounds fine until somebody with a white van decides he's going to park it in the existing development and people then complain. We know that traffic is a problem. I was canvassing today, something we approved, 5 houses. There's overspill from that development that makes the existing parking for existing residents even worse than it was before the development. So I would just like to be clear what residents of the existing development should do if cars are overspilling or vans are overspilling from this development into the existing neighbourhood.
Chairman, can I just also refer, I didn't pick it up before, but Ben is on my ear, if you like, on this. We also have condition 14, which sets out that those areas should continue to be used for no other purposes than for parking and turning of vehicles, and they should remain fear of obstruction for such use at all times. Unfortunately, people, they would, added to that, there's another condition that removes permitted development rights. So the conversion of garages, which is often where parking spaces are lost, in those areas that are uncontrolled, that could occur. So we've sought to redress that situation or address that situation. But we are not the highway authority in determining where people park, unfortunately, in those other circumstances. That's something we're not in control of.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Clark.
I was going to ask about profit margin. Thank you, you've covered it.
Can I ask a question on affordable housing, Mike? Because this is a huge issue for Cheltenham. And this is one of the ways where we get affordable housing on the back of planning applications. So we would normally look for 40% affordable, which in this case would be about 8 houses. When we go to the district valuer, are we going on the basis of 40%, or are we going to on the basis of can we even get 1 or 2 out of the scheme?
Can I just come back to you and question you about the number of houses you identify for affordable? Because that, I think, would be related to the total, as opposed to what is this planning application. So have you taken...
so I'm taking the 13 plus the 6.
Yeah, but
So
we are dealing with this
just
planning...
for the 6.
This
Yeah.
application was 6. So
Yeah.
what would that be of a small portion of 40%? And to that, I can't
Well,
do
it's
the
less than
maths.
10, isn't it? So it doesn't count.
Yeah. But we have done that, have looked at that as a wider issue to check the viability of the scheme on this. And I think I did hear the issues about complications with the site affecting the viability in terms of pipelines and so on, affecting that. So.
Sorry, any other member questions? Councillor Bamford?
Right, sorry. Yeah, it's really on this issue of sewage. I appreciate this is primarily not a planning issue, but have we had a statement from Severn Trent to indicate that this will make no material difference to other residents? It's not a planning condition. I just wondered what's in some sense, what's the purpose of consulting them if they're not going to actually? Where is it a consideration?
Chairman, if I can come back to that, as I say, it's not a material consideration, but it's in relation to good planning that we do consult them. I feel if they had identified an issue, they would have responded to us. They didn't, but they did respond directly to the applicant to indicate, and that would be the people and the legislation that they would have an involvement in. So I would respond in that way.
If it's subsequently, this obviously isn't necessarily pertinent to this particular application, but just for the committee's education, are you saying that if they have made a statement to the applicant and that statement subsequently proves to be inaccurate, there would be some comeback? Yeah, okay, fair enough. I understand at least how it might happen.
I'm just going to ask Cheryl to contribute to this as well.
I was just going to add that there's legislative requirements whereby sewerage undertakers effectively have a duty to provide linkages to their sewage. So therefore, any developer has a right for that, and that has to be accommodated one way or another. Where you do get Severn Trent say that a particular development is going to cause problems, which is very rare because obviously they have this duty, there has to be very known problems that are quite large scale, then you might consider things such as that those improvements have to happen before occupations happen. But it's not reasonable to do that as a standard. It would have to be something that was very much flagged as a major problem in the area.
Thank you. Any other questions? So go to debates. Who would like to speak first? Nobody? Councillor Nelson?
Thank you. No one else will. I'm just picking up on the comment about putting a condition in controlling the construction traffic, because we've seen it in far too many cases when construction traffic, although they're supposed to adhere to various rules, they don't, and the local residents get have problems to deal with, and particularly with the paved area with the paved road with no pavements and at school time. And as we heard people say, that's, you know, to coin a phrase, an accident waiting to happen, and we've heard about all the near misses. So I do think we need some very tight conditions over the construction side of things.
Well, that is condition 3. So, and I think the applicant also said in his presentation, referred to that specifically as well. Sorry, Councillor Fisher.
So, thank you, Chair. Just to say on parking, GCC are the Highway Authority, but the control of parking is down to common sense, and it is not in abundance. Any school at start time and finish time is mayhem, and it is ridiculous. Enforcement can't be everywhere, and also in my division and in my ward, I see on a daily basis a white van parked on the bus stop, in the pull-in on the bus stop on Chiltby Road, and it's there 7-8 hours a day. And I know that when people have work done and construction goes on, every tradesman turns up in his own van. That is a problem, and it is not curable, I'm afraid.
Chair, thank you. I was just going to add on the condition about construction traffic. Condition 3 does refer to construction hours, but to strengthen that, you could ask, also it has to provide details in respect of delivery hours as well, because obviously construction and delivery can sometimes be separated out. So if people would like to do that.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Anybody else? Okay, in that case then I think we'll move to the votes. The recommendation is to permit. Those in favour, please show.
6, Chair. Of 7. Sorry, can hands go up again? Apologies. 7 it is, Chair. 7.
And those against? Abstentions?
That's taken.
2. Thank you. So that is carried. We now go on to the next item then, which is the Wilson. And we will say goodbye to Councillor Clark.
For my next trip, I'll pull a rabbit out.
Yeah, come right, yeah.
No, you're fine.
Oh. Is it at the back? Where you went to with mine?
Okay, so before I introduce Chris Morris, I'm just going to ask Mike to address us first of all.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say, this is slightly unusual, bringing an application before the end of the consultation period. Various reasons that second consultation or further consultation was delayed, but this would enable us to meet our performance targets. So that's the reason why we brought the application at this stage. It is subject to no further, the recommendation is subject to no further adverse comments. Thank you.
Okay, Chris, over to you.
Thank you. So the application cites the Wilson Art Gallery and Museum on Clarence Street. The proposed works are internal works to the first floor. They include introduction of a mezzanine, the covering over of a number of windows and replacement doors. This is the site, you probably all know it. Probably also know that. So this is the floor plan. As I said, all the works are internal. The mezzanine is shown on the orange section on store 1 of the proposed first floor plan. All the windows are located on this floor that are being covered over that's to reduce light into the space, to prevent UV damage to the exhibitions, but also to provide additional wall space for exhibitions. The new doors are sort of variously located. They replace existing modern doors. Historic doors aren't affected. This is the existing sections. Probably the most relevant is the top cross section. The central area with the 3 windows shows the existing room where the mezzanine is proposed. The proposed cross section shows the area where the mezzanine is in blue. I hope you can see that. This is the appearance of the proposed mezzanine in Store 1. It's set in either end so that the room proportions are still partially visible. This is one of the wall treatments in Gallery Space 4. It's the most extreme version of the wall coverings. The inside of the window is going to be covered in a black film, so from the outside there won't be any sort of indication that the window has been blocked up. The black covering will sort of give an impression of a sort of shadow within the room. This is the proposed door schedule. The sole matter for consideration is heritage and the impact on the listed building as a listed building application, and whether the internal works sustain and enhance the significance of the listed building. It's considered that the proposed works will allow a better use of the internal spaces and ensuring the historic use of the building as an art gallery is retained. The alterations don't significantly affect historic features. The most significant impact is the introduction of the mezzanine, but all of the proposed changes could be reversed at a future date if required without harm. So there's a recommendation of approval with the application.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions? Straight to debate. Councillor Fisher.
It's nice to hear that everything is reversible, which is what it's amazing that with art, an artist needs good light to paint, but the minute he's painted it, he's got to keep the light off it, otherwise it's not going to last. I'd fully approve of this. It gives us a chance to exhibit more works.
Okay, I'll go straight to the vote in that case. Recommendation permit. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Has Councillor Clark left now? I think she might.
If she's up,
Oh,
she can come back.
she can come back. Yeah, good point. Sorry.
Yeah. She may have left. If she's left there.
I think that was her intention.
Just want to check before we. And never tell me off before.
Yeah, we're going to have a. Yeah. She's gone. Yeah. One agenda item 7, which appealed updates, but what I'm going to do is ask Mike to give us a truthful and honest update on what's actually happening with the Miller Homes application, which you will recall we refused. This was for 250 homes. There's an article in the Gloucestershire Live suggesting some things which weren't absolutely correct. So, Mike, would you like to update us on where we are with that? Because it is a significant application.
Thank you, Chairman. This misreporting, I would say, perhaps I should have taken legal advice before saying that, but it was wrong. It's wrong reporting. Came from an article that was published in the Times a little while ago, which suggested that the Secretary of State had called in a decision that the council had approved a scheme and he had stopped us approving that. That was not the case. As members are aware, the scheme was approved, refused. The rest of the main part of the proposals were acceptable in terms of, but there were issues around the construction and sustainability of the proposals that concerned members. So this was called in by the Secretary of State prior to the consideration at an informal hearing. And that was known before that. But at the hearing, the inspector said that he had been taken back to control by PINS, the Planning Inspectorate, rather than being called in by the Secretary of State. But subsequently to the closure of the informal hearing, the inspector wrote to the relevant parties and said that was wrong. The Secretary of State had called in the decision. So the process will now be that the Planning Inspectorate will provide a report to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State will consider that report and then make a decision. We have no indication of when that decision will be. But members will be aware, of course, the reasons for refusal were addressed at the informal hearing. So it's a bit of a confusing situation, I understand that, but it was inaccurate reporting both in the Times and then subsequently in Gloucester Live, Gloucester Echo. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Nelson, you walk out, so and then
Thank you.
Barnes.
I'm sorry, I just don't understand how you can call in something that's been refused. How can the Secretary of State call it in if it was refused by Cheltenham Borough Council?
There was an appeal against the refusal of planning permission. The Secretary of State delegates, if you remember the training when I was setting that forward, delegates the decision-making on appeals to the Planning Inspectorate, but retains the right to make that decision himself. So that's why it can be called in. I'm going into legal areas now.
I think there is a confusion of terminology because called in is sort of what a lay member might call it. If you've had an appeal and then the Secretary says, actually, I want to make that decision myself, it's actually technically a recovered appeal. Whereas you're probably thinking of call-ins when somebody hasn't quite made the decision yet, it's not gone to appeal, and actually the Secretary of State says, I'm making that decision, you're not making it. So what you've actually got is a recovered appeal. So he's recovered his authority to decide it himself on appeal. Thank you.
It seems absolutely bizarre when the objections have been addressed, but there we go. Councillor Barnes, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's not the first time the press have misrecorded what we do in the council, and I think it's important that we make the public aware of what the true facts are. Would it be possible to put out a proper supported press release to ensure that the public get the first-hand statement from the people who know us, in other words, or the officers? Yeah.
Chairman, if I can say, on the case of the Times report, the portfolio holder did make a statement, although I did not see that statement reported anywhere, despite the fact that it was distributed. I spoke to the portfolio holder today, and similarly, he was going to make another statement or write, trying to set out the situation as he understood it.
I also emailed the journalist concerned about it, and he hasn't come back to me. So I'll let Councillor Nelson finish off.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to question. Mike, you said that the planning inspector, I was at the hearing and I heard the inspector Zoe say that she was taking the authority, she had delegated authority to make the decision. Subsequently, as you say, she was told that no, she'd got that wrong and it was going to be the Secretary of State. And there was a letter written, and you said all interested parties were made aware. As well, ward councillor, I never knew. I didn't know until I checked back on the portal today, having seen the Echo, to see what was going on, and found a statement on there from the 12th of July, with a letter on it from Planning Inspectorate to Cheltenham Borough Council Planning saying Zoe had made a mistake, it was going to be Secretary of State. So I think it would have been nice to have been told that as ward councillor and quite heavily involved with that Miller application. Thank you.
I think that's a fair comment, Mike.
Sorry, I was going to agree, but our understanding was that letter had been sent by the Planning Inspectorate to all the parties recorded as attending the hearing. And I just wondered, sometimes people attend but they don't sign in, and that may have been, but I agree it is important that ward members are made aware of that. Our assumption was that all parties who were interested there were doing so.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Yeah, it's the age-old story. If you believe all you read, you eat all the food you see. And as my granddad said, the best thing about newspapers is 2 days later you get your chips in them.
On that planning note, item 8, no other items requiring a decision. So thank you all for your attendance and enjoy the evening. Thank you.